The M1 MacBook Pro 1 month review, what I've learned and what I love about it.
Yeah, you know me.
So the design, what an amazing machine. It's something that's so solid. It's really high quality, durable, feels like you could drop it. Probably shouldn't. Screen size has been fine. I'm able to resize the resolution when necessary, when doing a lot of data intensive work. The keyboard, really good experience. I feel like the Retina 2015 MacBook model had a slightly better keyboard. Not from the depth of the keystrokes, but the width in between the actual keys themselves. It felt like a little bit more natural. Now, going on from when I was talking about the trackpad and hitting that with my thumb, I've corrected myself subconsciously on how I type and how I use the trackpad. So that's actually something that really doesn't probably matter to most people, but it's something to consider when moving from the Retina and the older models to the larger trackpads. The touch bar is still just completely useless and I really never use it. So overall, the design and build quality is 10 out of 10. It's something you can't really improve on. I mean, you can definitely change the bezels, make it more sleek and modern, but honestly, I mean, it's a really amazing machine. Apple are known for their build quality and design, and the M1 is definitely up to par with its design and build quality. I would definitely recommend getting a case since they're actually a pretty slim laptop. It's not really going to affect your overall experience. And the in-case MacBook Pro and Air shells are really good and they just feel right. They snap on very easily. I like the dotted design. It doesn't really feel like it's a case. It looks like more of a natural texture to the laptop. The main reason I would get a case is just for those little knocks. Sometimes you drop things onto your laptop by accident, or sometimes you might knock it when you're going from place to place and you're not thinking and you're busy and you're hurried, or just putting it on your car seat or wedging it in between books. Whatever you need to do with your laptop, you just have that peace of mind that it's more of a work computer rather than like a delicate, beautiful piece of machinery, which some people may buy these computers and iPhones and Apple products for because it just like looks so nice. But this channel is all about the functionality and usability of Apple products and technology in general, and just, well, filmmaking, of course, we'll get into that, and photography and all that creative stuff, but just being practical. I'm someone who, I'm not really into just taking too much time into meticulously working things out. Like these YouTube videos, I kind of go on and edit it later, and I think that that's appropriate because life's pretty short and we need to live it while we're living. So I'll definitely get a case. The in-case is a good choice. There's probably some cheaper options on Amazon. I'll link a few below. Use the Amazon link if you can, support the channel, that's all cool. If not, just get yourself a case, that's fine. I reckon it's just something that you can't go wrong with, especially for resale value and for those little knocks and dents that would otherwise happen. I did get the silver MacBook Pro because apparently it's less prone to small scratches, but also it's just like a lighter look. I think the space gray has its place, maybe in like the 16-inch model, but just the small 13-inch M1, the silver looks really good to me. It's sort of fresh, and you also can really easily distinguish the keys between the body of the laptop, which I think subconsciously helps with your typing experience. So the Touch ID sensor, I've never had a Touch ID sensor on my laptop ever. So this was like when Face ID came about, I was like, whoa, this is how phones are supposed to be. This is how laptops are supposed to be as well. So going on websites, authenticating, remembering passwords, paying for things online, unlocking your laptop, it's just so amazing to have. If you haven't had a Touch ID sensor before, it's a really good experience. It's just a small added bonus, especially on the latest MacBooks, and in the M1, it's got one and it works so well. You just put your finger on, boom, it opens up the laptop, not a problem. I do wonder if the M1X will come out with Face ID. I think why not? And maybe the M1 as well, because it has the neural engine that actually improves your webcam quality, and it may be able to do the Face ID thing. I don't think that there's a reason why not. I'm not sure what the implications are. I understand that phones can do them. Maybe the M1 has the capabilities and the M1X does as well. Who knows? It would be really good to have Face ID on your laptop. And it would be pretty good because I guess if anyone else opened your laptop, it would automatically recognize that it's not you, and there would be possibly some ways to send a notification to your iPhone and let you know that someone else is opening your laptop. Otherwise, you don't really know that. So I think in the future, definitely Apple's going to implement a Face ID into the M1, M1X, M1, M2, you know, all this whole lineup. And it's going to be a really good feature. But for now, the Touch ID is something that I really appreciate. So moving on to the display. There's a P3 wide gamut display on the M1s, and this is really good to have, especially if this is your only machine. I have a dedicated IPS 4K monitor that I use for my professional color grading and color correcting when sending videos to clients. Now, I'm not really doing much color correction on the MacBook Pro, and also, honestly, I don't really see too much of a difference when you're editing on the MacBook Pro as opposed to one with a P3 or one without a P3 gamut display. Color grading is a funny, tricky game. And what I've heard from other professional photographers and video creators is that whatever kind of looks good on a standard display should be good enough. It's kind of a weird response to a professional skill that is so meticulous, but the people who do it on a really high level have so many things in place to make sure the colors are just so lifelike and beautiful. But for the everyday user, the P3 gamut display, I don't think is that big of a deal. You definitely would want it, just like having a number of other features on the MacBook Pro M1s and MacBook Air M1s. It's definitely welcomed. It's just not something that is a deal breaker for me, even though I'm a videographer and photographer. If you are that serious about color grading, you would get yourself an external monitor. And as I said before about the whole portable workstation thing, if you're color grading in a cafe, you're gonna have a whole bunch of ambient light. Just like in this studio space here, it's gonna change and fluctuate. You probably noticed that the clouds going in and out and the background changes, but I think that's kind of cool for these videos. But for color grading and correction and getting your right levels, that's just not the way to do it. You're supposed to do it in a dark room and have everything set and worked out. So if you were that serious about color grading, you'd get yourself an external monitor. The P3 gamut display is good to have, but it's not that necessary. The webcam has been really awesome. Great feedback from everybody involved on the other end of my Zoom calls, Microsoft Team calls. They say, wow, Tim, you've got such an amazing camera, or, you know, wow, look at how awesome your image looks. And I will say that yes, the Neural Engine does an amazing job. The idea of a 720p camera being not enough resolution, I don't think that's a fair enough call. It's just a webcam. You don't need anything much higher. It would help, obviously, to have a 1080p camera and higher resolution for things like doing live video podcasts and interviews. That always helps. But the Neural Engine does help with the shadows and highlights, and overall produces a really nice neutral image that has a bit of an HDR look that looks really nice for a webcam. Generally, I get on my Zoom calls and Microsoft Team calls and open up any windows around me to give the most amount of natural light. Having a really dark room doesn't help with your appearance on the other end of a professional call. And it also doesn't help with the video processing. So the grain and the noise reduction just doesn't really work that well with the MacBook M1. So the 720p camera is just fine, in my opinion. Sure, in the M1X, there might be a 1080p camera, but the 720p camera versus the new whatever resolution camera they have in the new models won't matter that much if you don't have the right lighting. So I recommend using a lot of natural light. And if you have some LED lighting, sure, use that as well. But for the majority of cases, using natural light will improve your webcam experience. That's really going to make your online appearance look much better. So the battery life after 1 month use has just been consistently amazing. I haven't had to charge it throughout the day ever, even when exporting videos, going on Zoom calls, emailing, sending files. It's just like, I don't bring my charger. I used to bring, you know, my charger to wherever I'm going. Now I could literally just not bring it. I mean, if it was something super important, you'd probably just want to bring it as a backup. But for the majority of cases, having no charger is just so liberating. Just grabbing the laptop and going, and it just lasts. It lasts more than 1 day. It lasts 2 days if you needed to. It could last a whole week if you only used it for emails and some general web surfing or note taking. It's the way laptops are supposed to be. Thank you, Apple. Thank you so much for making the M1. It's just, you can see how I'm smiling. Like, the battery is just the biggest selling point, one of the biggest selling points on this computer. The battery and the performance, hands down. Get the M1, get the Air. Don't worry about the M1X. You want a good laptop, reliable, get the get the M1 MacBook Air. You're done, you're sorted. Don't worry about watching any more videos on it. Just go get the Air, you're done. The link's below, that's fine. For all of you other people out there that need a little bit extra, cool, M1X is coming out. The M1 MacBook Air is literally all you need. The video, yeah, let's just cut. The only thing that really drains my battery is plugging in my iPhone 12 mini into my MacBook Pro M1 and allowing it to charge. It charges super fast. Within half an hour to 45 minutes, we're almost getting a full battery from like 15%. Within 20 minutes, I'm getting anywhere from 40 to 50% of my battery back on my phone. It does take about a third of my battery away from my M1, but I think that's a really good trade-off. You want that. You want it to be super fast, relatively efficient, and in most cases, just to give you that extra juice on your phone, because the phone does take precedence over your laptop in most cases. You need to take calls, you need it with your SIM card and all these reasons. So when hotspotting and tethering, I would recommend not to plug in your phone into your laptop because it will drain it very quickly. And sometimes you don't need to charge your phone. And even when my iPhone 12 mini is on 100%, I noticed that it still drains the MacBook Pro M1's battery quite a lot. It kind of drains it. So just have that in consideration when tethering. Try to do it where it's just wireless. Apple has done a really good job in conserving battery life when tethering, I've noticed. So you can tether for a couple of hours and your phone will be probably down more than half of its battery, but that's a pretty good trade-off. And if you need to, just plug it into your laptop and get that 50% back within 20-25 minutes. Lastly, the processing speed and the RAM. I don't need to talk about it too much, but you already know it's helped me so much with just small video jobs, even processing 4K video, photography, Lightroom, media encoder. It's like a secondary workstation almost. It's not, doesn't have the grunt to edit 6K raw files or even, you know, sort of 4K, kind of lags up after a little bit of time. But it's like, hey, let's just do this little job on the MacBook somewhere else just to sort of free up and change up the environment. Maybe go into the dining room and do some work there, or maybe go to a cafe and do some light editing and media encoding and sending to Dropbox or sending to clients. Little small changes that you might need to do, that getting on the PC, logging in and starting up the apps is actually taking a lot of time away. It's an amazing secondary workstation, and the 8 cores and 8 GPU cores, I mean, it flies. It's amazing. I don't know how much faster the M1X will be, but I don't know how much more you really need. Overall, the performance has been second to none. I've never had a laptop this fast. It is the base model. I've had the 16 gigabyte 512 SSD 4-core i7 MacBook Pro Retina 2015. Highest spec model you could get all those years ago, and it just you can't keep up. It just gets too hot and then throttles. And then once it's throttling, forget about it. The M1, the chip, the architecture, 11 out of 10. Go get yourself an M1 MacBook Air for $1,000 US, and that's it. Game over. You're fine, you're done. If you can't really produce from an M1 MacBook Air in 2021, you need to reconsider your workflow. I've had to reconsider and reevaluate my workflow many times over the years. How do I import media? Am I importing it natively, or maybe should I transcode it first? And once I transcode it, why is it so much easier to use as compared to using the native footage? And where am I bringing the footage in from? Is it better to use an SSD externally to sort of free up the internal pathways of the SSD? There's these questions you need to think about. You got to think about your workflow, especially in video editing, about where your source files are. Do you have a separate drive for your cache? How big's your cache? Are you exporting your video files into proxies to make it a bit easier to work with? What program and updates do you have? There's a whole bunch of things you need to think about first before just going out there and speccing your computer up to the max. $1,000 for a laptop that could resell for probably $150 less from what you bought it if you keep it in good condition. I think you're onto a good investment. I would recommend anyone and everyone to get a MacBook Air M1. You want the extra features like I've talked about in this video, get the MacBook Pro, the CPU, GPU, RAM, everything. as I said, 11 out of 10. So that wraps up the 1 month review. There's nothing really else I could talk about. I mean, yeah, cool as computer, does the job and some more. It's very reliable. The battery life lasts all day. It's just something that I can look to put in my car, go somewhere, open it up, do half an hour worth of work, write some ideas down, close it up, move on to the next location, copy some files, edit them, whatever. 1 month later, this is an 11 out of 10 review. It'll resell if you keep it in a nice case like the in case or any other case. It's going to provide you with enough resources and computing power to get you going. If you're already a professional, you know why you're getting the M1X. If you're just starting out with video, the M1 MacBook Pro or Air is just more than enough that you need. And you're going to be covered by Apple's warranty. For those that are interested, comment below. Let me know if there's any filmmakers here watching the channel, because there's obviously a lot of tech guys and there's lecturers and coders and all sorts of people, which is really cool to know. And it's good to hang out. And I do appreciate all the comments and feedback, and it's really fun to be a part of that. But if there are any filmmakers, it'd be good to know, because then I can kind of, tailor some of the content towards video production and let you know my experience over the last 10 years making music videos, corporate commercials, flying drones all over the world. Yeah, we can go on. Thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. Be your best self and have a good one.